Hi everybody. All right, so you all asked that I do another review of this, how I did this data cleaning in Excel. So we have our data sheet, which has order numbers, and then we have different shipping modes, and then each shipping mode has a different segment or location. So what we want to start with is totals. Let's just clean up and get this out of here. We don't need this. If I hit Control, I can select this column as well, which is corporate total, and then home office total. And then I go to delete and delete columns. And from there, we have consumer, corporate, home office. And I also saw last time that we had these grand totals. Go ahead and get rid of those as well. All right, so now we have vendors, consumers, corporate, and office. Now there's two approaches that we can take in order to get to this format, where we have the order number, and for each order number we have a ship mode, a segment, and a sales. So each order number has a specific 3 points of data. Let's go actually ahead and, because we're more interested in this format just to make it easier to interpret. For each order, we're interested in these 3 pieces of information: how it was shipped, where it was shipped, or what segment, and what money was spent. So there's 2 approaches that you can take here. One is to copy the column down, and then just to make a row and delete everything. So let's try that first. So we'll do same day consumer, and I will select all the information in this column. This is just me holding Control Shift and hitting the down button. Actually, let's do it this way, much easier. Hit down, we'll go over, get our column that we want, paste it down there, and then delete everything in this column so that it moves over, because we already have this one pretty well set up. And then we just delete cells, everything moves over to the left after you've hit delete shift cells left. Okay. So now we have our same day consumer shipping. Okay, so we can even, if we wanted to, we can say, we can go ahead and put in our labels so that we know for each one this is consumer and this is same day. But we don't have any data here. Okay, for this order, we don't have any data. It's not until we get to this one that we have any data. So what you can do is, if you select all of your records, all of your orders, and then go over to this, first, so don't mess this up. These are all the same. We were interested in same day, so we just pull that down. And now we want to delete any of these orders that don't have money in them, right? So we go to, I'll do it this way. Find and select, go to special, select blanks. And now what we have is that any of the columns or any of the rows that have blank data in that, all of those things that we selected will now be highlighted. So not the ones that have values. And we can just go through, hit delete, and delete rows. And now, so all of our orders are now in here, right? So if we look at 2304 or 113047, it is 1185. If we go up here and search for that, it's this one. We can see 1185 was spent for same day. Okay. If we want to double check this, we can. We can go all the way up to the top. We can say in the same day column, how many observations were there? And you can look down here, it says count 28. Okay, and then how many observations are down here? Count 28. So what we've done is taken each of these orders, we've moved the column down, and then we've deleted any empty cells, so all that remains are observations based on these criteria. So let's do second class next. So again, we'll just select all the way over, and then we'll hit down while holding Control Shift, hit down. We'll copy that over, bring it down here. We know this is consumer, and this was, what was this? This was second class. So 1129 should be our first one that we see down here. 1129. Okay. These columns we don't need because those are for the other ones, so we can just delete. Okay. Move these things down. Again, if you want to just fill in the rows, fill in the cells below here, you can select what you want, hit the double click once you have the little cross, and it automatically fills down. And again, I want to select my entire data set for here, my entire section of data. Okay, I've got all of the observations done. I can go to special, blanks, and then just delete any of the rows that don't have data. So now we have our orders for consumer same day and consumer second class, all of the orders based on price. So this is starting to look like this. So another way you can approach this is, rather than, if you didn't want to do all of this down at the bottom, like we showed, kind of copying down each column and then filling it in, you can write a formula. So here what we're after is order number, and then the segment information, consumer, corporate, or home office, and then the ship mode, first class, same day, second class, standard class for each of these columns. So what we can do is write a formula. And we use if-then statements to get what we need. And what if-then statement is, if a certain thing happens, so in this case, if, and our logical test is, if the sum of all of these, of the consumer-related columns is not 0, then the value would be this, consumer. That would be the segment type. Okay, so we can just stop there, and it's false, right? If we wanted to put a number in, we could say if it's false, we can say too bad. And we get a response that says too bad. But what we're interested in is having multiple or nested if-then statements. So if the sum of these is not 0, which means there's data in them, then give us consumer. If it's not, we need to move on to our next statement. So if the sum of these cells is not 0, then give us this. And finally, if the sum of these last 4 columns is not 0, then we're going to put this, and we're going to leave it blank if it's none of those. Oh, I have a typo. And there it is. So what I've done is said, if any of these cells are blank, or any of these cells have data in them, give me this. If any of these cells have data in them, give me this. And finally, if any of these cells have data, give me this. And this one does, so it gives me this 1. So what I would need to do then is, in order to get this formula all the way down, I would just double-click on the little box in the right-hand corner, and it copies down. It should copy. Oh, well, let me rephrase. Let me edit this. Because I've referenced this column here, I need to make it stick. And the way you make it stick onto a certain cell is you use the $ for the column ID and the row ID. But because I don't have that, what we can see, I'll show you here in a moment, because I didn't lack that, is when I copied it down, it just copies down the reference cells, the reference points in Excel. So this row, but because I had not copied in or locked it to this cell, it just moves these reference ones down, which is why here it's this, because it's referencing over here. But because we adjusted that and now we've locked it to these cells, we can copy it down. And we have all of that nice and clean. Okay, for the last one, we can do the same thing. So ship mode is a little bit trickier because we have a lot more data points, right? So what we can do is write an if-then statement that is if is blank, this first class one, if it is blank. Now let's write it. Yeah, no, let's do it differently. We can use if bank, but we're going to use just the same structure logical test. So if blank, if this one is not equal to 0, then this, and if it is, we'll do if again this not equal to 0. If it's true, this, and so on and so forth. Okay, I'm going to pause. I'll fill this all in and come right back. Okay, and I'm back. So what I've done is continued that out. So now it says if this cell is not equal to 0, so if it has information in it, I return this bit of information. You've noticed I put the $sign just above, just by 2, because in this case I just need to reference this column, this particular column, and I'm not. It's going to stay in this column as I copy down, but I need to stay in row 2, because if it doesn't stay in row 2, it's going to continue to move down, and then we'll have that weird kind of numbers over here instead. And then I've just continued on. If this is not 0, this. If this is not 0, this. This, not this. So I've just continued to nest it out, and then add in, if it's finally none of those, it's just blank, and then you close out all of these different little formulas with all of the parentheses at the end. So let's test that. We get standard class, which is accurate. We have standard class over here, and we'll copy down all of the way. So second class, this is second class. Okay, so that looks pretty good. We're getting close. We have order number, consumer, first class data, whatnot. So the next step is something that if you use formulas to get the data that you want, what you're going to do is, if I delete all of this stuff over here, with the formula still intact, let's just see if I delete all of these cells here. What happens? So we have home office and standard class. If I delete all of these empty cells, shift cells left, it messes it up, right? Because there's no longer the data where it should be. All of the columns are messed up. The cells are not where they should be. So you're going to mess all that. What you do is you should select these formulas. They've given you the data that you need. You copy. And when you paste, you right-click and you paste with values. Okay, so right now it has this formula in there. If I copy and paste the values, it now has just what the formula output was. All right, and so with that, we can go ahead and clean up, or we can just hit Control A. That selects just this data set. The sample of data. We can go to special, find, select, go to special, go to blanks. Gives me all the blank cells. We delete cells, we shift everything to the left, and now we have our nice clean data set. Okay, so that is one way that is another way that you can do it. A final way that you can do it is if you don't want to delete the cells. One way that you can do once you get to this point is you can also get rid of this. You could also insert a pivot table. Pivot tables basically capture all of the data within the set and give you summaries of it. So we'll put a pivot table right here, and we can put order ID, and we can do sale amount, and here we can see the sale amount for each order ID. We can put in segments and ship mode as well. This isn't really as clean, right? Because we still have all of the empty data. We could say don't show me settings. We could say hide the data, the cells that don't have data. We could do that. It's just not as clean to do it at this point with all of these empty cells. So get rid of all of the empty cells in this table and get to this. Okay, now on this we have data that has cells that have multiple, that should be in multiple cells, right? We should have one cell that says binders, art, phones, fasteners. So what we want to do is we want to take this data, go to the data ribbon, and we want to do text to columns. Because we want to split this data out, and we want to delimit it based on certain types of characters. Here it's given us this straight up and down line. We can use that, and you can see how the data is in one cell. I select this delimiting factor, and now it shifts to different cells. Okay, so now we have four different cells, 5 different cells for that one. And what we would need to do next is do it for this one as well. Text to columns, next, same thing, it splits it out. Okay, so let me clean this up for a moment here, make it look nice. Okay, so now we have our order number, we have categories, our 5 categories, and our cells. What do you do next? Well, what I would suggest is, because this is still not helpful, what we're trying to get to is an order ID, a category, and then an amount. What you can do is you select the rows of data, you right-click to copy it, you right-click to copy, and then use the transpose function. Okay, transpose basically takes your column from being horizontal, or your row from being horizontal to being vertical. And why is this good? Well, now I can actually align things the way that they should be. And here's a quick point of a fun point before I do that is, so now since I've moved it, now all of the things look pretty. They're all in the right kind of order, the way they should be. If I want to just bring this down, I could double click, but what it does is it automatically renumbers these. So this one order was 167199, and then it goes to 167200, 201, 202, and so forth. This is the fill function. And sometimes it automatically gives it to you, and sometimes you can select. If you ever have that, you got to watch out. You can always right click and copy the data in. So let me do these for these. I could just do, since it's only 2, transpose, there. Now, this is a small data set. Larger data sets, we can do similar things, but it might take some time. There are functions on other software, such as Python and R, where you can do those things. They'll do it for you automatically once you've kind of set it up in the correct way. So it may take some setting up to get it the way you want, but it's definitely something that you can do. And we have one more here. Transpose. Just move that right there. And delete. Up. Okay, so now we have this thing looking good. Right? This looks like this does here. I will note that you can see that when I did the split, when I split it from the dashes to this, some spaces got in here. We can see that there's a space right at the beginning of this one. Because that's the way it was formatted, it had a space at the beginning. So that kind of came through, and it doesn't look great because accessories are fine. But then office supplies is okay. But furniture, technology, all of those things are struggling a little bit. So what we can do is use trim. Use a formula called trim, removes all spaces except the single spaces between words. So we use trim. Oops, don't need that yet. Trim this. This one was okay, so it didn't really affect it. But you can see now art is the space between the trim is, the space between the word is removed, and so on. So we'll just put this over here and delete that, and we're good. This one looks good. I also showed this one in class. This one is similar to what this one was originally, where it had data in between and just data listed in a single row. But this one lacks a delimiting factor, right? It uses name and then address and then gender and age as indicators for as variable names, but it's all in the same row. And that's going to make it tricky to remove. So one thing you could do is, since we have standardized variable names in each of these, is that we can just remove them. And the way you do that is you would just select the data. I use Control F for find. If you replace, we don't need name in here, so we can just replace name with a space. We'll just replace that with, if you put nothing in the replace with, it just leaves it blank. So replace. So now name is removed, and we have all of the other data. Now, in order to get something that the computer can work with, is we can use address and replace. We'll use that. Tell you what, we'll use a comma this time. No, we don't want to use comma. Let's use a semicolon. All right, so now we've removed, taking out address with a space at the end, so it's nice and clean, so we don't have to trim later, and we'll replace with a semicolon. And we'll replace all. So now we have name, and then the semicolon, and the address. Let's do the same for the other two variables. Age, replace all, and gender, replace all. Okay. So now we have this little data set. It is name, address, age, and gender are the headers. And we'll take this selected data and we'll do the text to columns again. Text to columns. Now we have something that we can delimit on, and we have a semicolon. So I've taken the single row of data. I've identified something that is a symbol that we can use across all of them, and I'm telling the software to split those cells based on those criteria. So now we have a nice looking spreadsheet. Oh, we did delay. Huh. Let me do it again. I just decided to override what I did. So let's just do it again real quick. All right, now we have a nice clean data sheet where we have name, address, age, and gender. All right, so that looks just like this one. We're all set to go. Hopefully that was helpful. I can do some more Excel tutorials just to get you all up to speed. We can talk more about that next class. Awesome. Thanks.